How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we have a great episode today. We're going to be talking about some soft skill for correctional officers. Now, be advised, this was taped live. There is taped live. So we will be taking some live Q&A. We're going to try to stay true to the topic, but we do like to give respect to the people who do ask questions while we go live. So if the question does go off topic, that's fine. We'll answer the question, and we'll go back to going back on topic. If people take the time to come and watch us live, we do want to answer their questions as they're asked. Again, we'll try to stay with the topic, but if you have a question and it's off topic, that's fine. You know, we're more than happy to answer. I have my guests today are going to be Russ Hamilton and Joe Pomponio. But let me get my sponsors in there, guys. So the first sponsor we got is American Military University. Let me just scroll down and get it. Hey, guys, if you're looking to get a degree, seek higher level education, please do me a favor. Check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. It is a great online school. And again, if you're looking to bring experience back into the classroom, guys, this is a great way to do it. Check them out, American Military University. We also have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That is on the market. The link to that is in the description. Guys, that book is used for training all across the country now. It really is very good information that helps you deal with those inmate interactions. And we also have, guys, if you get a chance, this is a book that's worth getting as well. It's Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison, My Journey from Officer to Admin. The link to that is also in the description. That book just got tons of nuggets, not just from me, but from a bunch of other correctional professionals in the field, including Russ and Joe as well. And we have the Tier Talk mugs. They're available. Link to that is also in the description. So that's the front of the mug, and that's the back of the mug. The old saying, it's time for our voices to be heard. My newsletter is coming out again. That's free. That comes out once a month. The topic on this one's going to be about intuitions. I think that may come out tomorrow, so look for it. It'll be out on the YouTube channel, and it'll probably come out on the Facebook page, LinkedIn, if you follow me on LinkedIn. And, guys, these posters are selling very well. It's posters that are 18 signs you're overly involved with an inmate. It's right here. You hang it up at your facility. 18 signs you're too close to an inmate. If you're looking to get those posters, because they've been doing very well, and thank you, guys, for those that bought them. And guys, as I said, I mean, I think I've covered everything that you need to, 18 signs. I mean, so again, definitely something you want to hang up in your training or maybe even on the units. Either way, if you're looking to get those posters, you got to email nassahs22@gmail.com. So again, nassahs22@gmail.com. That's the person that handles the posters. And I think you should get them in bulk, because that's where you start to save money, because these posters cost a lot to make individually. So when you buy them in bulk, it saves us money, so we can go ahead and get you guys more, instead of doing it through, I think it's like $18, $20 for us to pay first. So the more you get in bulk, I think like you can get like 10 of them for $100. So instead of buying one for 18 or 20, you could buy 10 and get them for $100. So that seems to be worth it. And I'm sure you can find room in your facility to hang up 10. And I'll hopefully, sorry, that's my daughter there. Hey, hopefully I'll know something soon about a possible nice thing that could be coming my way. I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed. Once I know and I'm able to make the announcement, I'll let you guys know. I want to keep you guys informed. But let's go ahead and bring the guest, and then we'll give some shout outs to the people that are watching right now. We have about 21 people in. So let's get Russ in. What's up, Russ?
Anthony, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, brother. Hey, Russ, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
I never mind introducing myself. So my name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started my career, my journey, if you will, back in the 80s at San Quentin State Prison. Later on, I transferred and promoted. And then later on, after I retired, I came back for a couple years, put on a good couple-year clinic on how to find contraband. Went back out again, came back as a senior juvenile correctional officer for a local county facility here. And then after that, I kind of retired again, but then I went back to work for a private company where we do re-entry and rehabilitation work for a local probation department and a local county jail where I am the case manager.
Yeah, and as I said, Russ, it's great to see Russ go from the harder side now to the softer side. That's why this is a good topic, embracing your softer skills. And I think it's timely too, guys. Let's be honest, it's timely. I'm not afraid to say now that it does require softer skills to work in corrections. It used to be taboo, especially when we had that alpha mentality. But to be honest with the way we're going, we should start introducing softer skills. And for people that are good with it, we should acknowledge that as well. And hey, real quick, Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going?
Keepers of Chaos, we're coming up on the magic 6,000 mark, and so I'm real happy about that. We're getting quite a few new members every day, and we are really focused on, actually helping people in the profession. And I go in there every single day, or at least when I can, and try and find someone that's asked a question and give my 2 cents worth in. Generally, though, things right now are so good that everyone's, getting in there and they're making great comments. And, it really runs the gamut. You have a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different experience, and that depth of experience and, just prior, incidents and things like that. They're really able to help a lot of people out there. And I think that this is really going to be one of the things where Keepers of Chaos is going to shine. And, our main way of doing videos, of course, is through Tier Talk. And so I think it's a match made in heaven, if you will.
Yeah, I just want to mention also congratulations to my boy Sean Klesnick. If I'm correct, I believe he's VP of the AJA. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Sean. I got Joe coming on next, but that's a hell of an achievement. I have met Sean when I was out in California. I was speaking at one of their engagements, and I mean, outside of AJA, by the way, who's phenomenal, Sean is truly dedicated to helping those that work in the profession, both jail and prison. So I believe he just got elected as a VP, or he's in the process of getting it. But if anybody could do the job because they lead by care, it's definitely my boy Sean. I know Sean before he became big. Now he's big. But be honest with you, he's just someone that's truly passionate about the profession. So I truly hope he gets whatever he wants from this profession, because he damn well deserves it. That's my boy Sean. So just want to send some love out to Sean. Loved you. All right, third VP elect. There it is. I want Sean to know, Sean, we loved you before you became big. So don't forget that, So if there's opportunities for us, remember, Sean, we loved you first. There it goes. Honored and appreciated. Yeah, of course. We love you, Sean. You know that. And we're here for you. Anytime you want to come on the venue, just let us know. All right, let me get Joe on. Joe Pomponio, what's up, brother?
What's happening, guys?
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing that Tier Talk mug? We don't need to know about you.
Wait, where is my mug? That's what I want to know. I suspect Joe has two. I think he.
Yeah, Joe is.
I told you. See, he's got my mug.
Listen, on those nights when he double fists.
This is my mug. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
One is mine.
Yeah, I can tell. It's got lipstick on it. Hey,
That's
Joe. Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself, brother?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Corrections with 30 years. I am an avid coffee drinker and a Tier Talk member. And looking forward to tonight's discussion.
Yeah, and guys, Joe kind of humbled himself a little bit, guys. He's got tons of experience, made up to LT, worked for the Texas Department of Corrections, a very, very, I know Texas, they rock it like no other. Okay, we got John Nelson. So let me give some shout outs. John Nelson, when I started in 1997, was throw the key away system. When I retired as lieutenant in Connecticut, times changed. Maybe the old school way didn't work. We're going to talk about that, John. And guys, by the way, we do have a topic. We're going to talk about the softer skills. But if you want to, if you want to ask a question, we're not going to ignore it. If it's a little off topic, we can get back on, because the show is for you guys. We just do a topic just in case we're not with a filled room. We still have dialogue that we can discuss. But I want to give a shout out. We got JoJo, Big Drizzy. We got Justice Jane, my boy Chris. We got Eric S., who's always with us. And guys, sometimes it has Facebook user. If you want, you can go on YouTube, because then I can know who you are, because I don't know why Facebook does that. I'm having problems with Facebook. So, okay. So real quick, I like what John asked a very good question as the softer skills work. So real quick, guys, I have some skills I want to talk about. specifically, but obviously it's going to branch. Russ and Joe are not familiar with the skills I'm going to bring up, but they're experts. They're just going to wing it when I bring it up. They're good, obviously, so they'll be able to kind of I'll give them one of the skills, and I'm sure they'll be able to tell you how best it could be employed. But the reason why I want to bring this up, guys, is because as correction shifts, we also have to learn to adapt and adjust to what's happening, but always stay true to the core values. So I like what Nelson said real quick. If I can go back to what John Nelson said. John Nelson said when he started in 1997, it was throw the key away system. When I retired as lieutenant in Connecticut DOC, time changed. Maybe the old school way didn't work. I think there's a balance, Joe, that we want to talk about here, because as we move forward, I like to say evolve. I really don't like to say the word change, because to me, evolve is bottom up. It's not being pushed down and trying to go by saying that we've done a lot of things wrong and we're going to change everything. For me, it's like, we're learning from what we've done in the past, failures and successes, to make us better. So I love the word evolve. But having said that, the softer skills have to still be connected to those core values. So I want people to remember something. It's always about safety and security. So when you employ those softer skills, it's not employing them from a blank template. You're employing them as being filtered through the core values of what is the ultimate goal here, which is always maintaining a safe and secured facility. So don't look at softer skills as an isolation from every other skill that we have to utilize. That core values is the end game. It's safety and security. So everything we do has to fall through the safety and security, including those softer skills. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the softer skills, and then we're going to show you how that can help make a facility more safe, so we can kind of bring us into that new, I don't know where the department's heading now. And Sandy Howard Clark says, Anthony, I make you mad. Am I ever going to be asked back? Oh, come on, Clark. We know who Sandy Clark is. One of the best shows we've ever had. 100%. I'll reach out to you. I didn't know. I didn't know if you were busy. She's blaming you, Joe. Sandy Clark, guys, if you get a chance, we did a show about a fallen hero, very heartfelt show. Sandy, I'd have you on in a heartbeat. I'll touch base with you later in the weekend. We'll get you back on, and we'll do a whole nother live. We try to do them on, I think Friday. We're going to try to start doing them, keep it consistent on Friday. I was looking at that. I was like, is that a troll? I thought that was a troll saying I hate her, but then I see who it is. So let's do this. What's your feeling about some states implementing the way corrections done in order? Okay, we'll get to that because that's going to cross into that anyway. So let's start with the first skill. And I'll go with Russ first and then Joe. But because I touched on it real quick, let me just start with this as a soft skill, guys, because it is adaptability. All right, so Russ, Russ, adaptability, adapting and adjusting. Obviously, there's many ways that correctional officers or correctional staff will employ adaptability in their career, but how important is it now to be good to be able to adapt and adjust? I mean, not even just dealing with situationals, but I'm also talking about not dealing with just the situations that come your way, but also just adapting to the times.
Okay, well, boy, that's a really broad thing there. But just to start with, what I would say about that is this: there was a time where we could, get by with having a lot of officers that were basically, one-trick ponies, and they did their jobs and they did them very well, but they were, either one-dimensional or two-dimensional in the way they approached things. And that was fine, because at that time we were not trying to implement, programming. We were not trying to do the rehabilitation side. We were not trying to do the reentry side. And so all we really needed is just safety and security, and pretty much nothing else beyond that. So now we're in a position where we have all of this programming coming. We have a lot of states that, to be honest, they don't even really know what they're doing, except that they think that they just want to push the softer side. Well, softer skills are not necessarily part of the softer side. The softer side is where they just kind of like cave to anything that they want to go on, and they do it in a way that actually not only sacrifices safety and security, but it also sacrifices rehabilitation and reentry. So I think that there's a mix that I think that we can bring to the table, where we can discuss this, and we can, if we're going to give this the old college try, at least we should have that place at the table where we can tell them, this is what we need in the way of safety and security. This is what we need in the way of training to be able to go this way. because not every person that's getting into this job right now can handle it at this level.
Yeah, you know what? I like what you said before I get to Joe. I think the importance now is obviously I would like us to be more involved in where we're headed because we're the balance to that, guy. So as corrections is changing, we have to add our input or else it is going to go to that extreme soft side. And we don't want that. We want that to be somewhere in the middle. But again, if we're not familiar with where we're headed, it's going to make it very hard for us to adapt because we're not going to know what we're adapting to. So again, I think for me, what helps me out when it comes to adaptability is always understanding in the back of my mind where I want to be or what I'm trying to get to, because if I don't know that, then technically adaptability without no structure, how are you creative if you have no structure? You can't be. You got to have some level of structure. I think the more we're involved in where we're headed and the more we know where we want to be, then you could adapt, because if you don't have an end game in mind, if you don't have where you want to be, or you're not a part of the changes, which we want you to be, then you have no idea what you need to do. I think that's the biggest concern here. So again, adaptability for me fits perfectly in line with some level of structure and also knowledge of what it is we're dealing with or what it is that's expected of us. Because if we don't have the end result, then we're not really adapting to anything. We're just kind of moving all over the place, hoping that we get lucky. That's my opinion. But Joe, what's your thoughts on adaptability as a softer skill for correctional officers?
Well, I mean, historically, we kind of had to evolve and learn to adapt, and things were much different from when I came in '92. It wasn't more. It would, like Russ said, it wasn't geared towards the rehabilitation side or reentry side. It was more straight across the board safety and security. And, over time, as we kind of succumb to outside influences, outside pressures, political, governmental, whatever you wanted to call it, we were given more tools to lean towards the rehabilitation side. So at some point, we kind of had to tip the rock in the other direction there and adapt to the new ways of corrections. It's something that, we all had to do over time. It may not have been, subtle or instant, but at some point in all of our careers, we've all had to adapt to new comings and new beginnings, to include the rehabilitation side. So with not just corrections, but with any job, there's going to be some level of adaptability, some level of evolving, to carrying out the same mission just in a different way. It's just breaking yourself of the habit and the routines of what you were taught when you first came in versus the direction that you're going now.
Yeah, and I want to mention something too. When it comes to adaptability, I think the biggest changes that we have to adapt to is how we deal with the inmate population. I mean, that to me is really where the changes are happening, whether it's a new rule being changed and like how discipline can be used or use of force, how we explain our uses of force, because again, the system is changing from what used to be punitive to now, I guess, more constructive. I think constructive would be the term. But again, overall, whether it's punitive or even rehabilitation, or I'd say constructive, there's still a level of accountability that still holds true with our core values. So having said that, what stops us from going to the complete soft side of operating in a prison, because again, let's say you have the alpha, which is the strictly punitive side, and then you have the I love every inmate on the other side. So in the middle, there's accountability. I think accountability is what balances the punitive and the rehabilitative side, because guys, if there's no accountability, you ain't doing either one. So let's just put that in the middle. But I think adaptability is in the ways that we hold people accountable. Now, mind you, what does accountable mean? It's holding people accountable for their behaviors. It's more about holding them accountable for their actions. So having said that, the adaptability really comes from, and which I wish would be put at the table more, is I know corrections is going through a change. And that we're going to what could be considered a softer side. But at the end of the day, the core component of this is holding inmates accountable for their negative behavior. So when we do adapt, what are some of the routines right now that can hold inmates accountable to the point where we're not too soft, but we're not too hard. But the end result is we're not putting the facility at risk. And Russ, just let me ask you, kind of putting it out there, and I may want to hit Joe up again on this too as well, is adaptability and holding inmates accountable. Do you agree with that? Is that where, they're trying to make some changes and we have to hold true? We cannot let go of accountability. That's the one thing there's no compromise on, in my opinion.
Right. The part that I always really worry about is when they go to this, ultra soft view on the way things are going in any department across the land, is they're just willing to throw accountability out the window. If you look especially, and I bring it up every time, what went on with Halt over there in New York is they're just basically, turning staff into fodder for the inmates, and there is no accountability. There is no discipline. There's no safety. There's no security. There's no programming. There's no rehabilitation. There's no reentry work being done in situations like that. You have to have a safe workspace before you can do anything towards adaptability and trying to, bring those programs online. The idea that, we're being kind by caving to everything that an inmate wants to do. Well, we're not preparing them to go back out there. We're preparing them to go out there and just think that the system is exactly the same or even worse out there, and that they can get away with crime after crime after crime after substance use, without any accountability. And, maybe accountability is something we use too often, but they're just getting away with it. I see it all the time, even in my little community here where I've tried to move away from the crime, is that, we have fentanyl running rampant. I have participants who are dying from that. We have people out here that are, committing much more serious crimes than I've ever seen in my little area. And, all of the teeth have been taken out of like the local law enforcement. They arrest someone, they're back out on the street. They arrest someone and that person gets convicted. And then what happens is they end up, just being put straight to probation. And then the probation officers are out there trying to work the problem from their view. And, it takes them, 10, 15, 20 violations before they can go in there and make an arrest where the judge is going to take it seriously and hand down some time, even if it's only like a 10-day flash or whatever. So, the people that are in charge of the show right now, I think just don't have necessarily a deep appreciation for all the causes and effects, because it's a complex dance that's happening out there.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? So as we were having this, we didn't really prepare for where the discussion's going. We don't do that. We develop our dialogue as we move forward. So when we talked about adaptability, I didn't even think about this accountability part. It's just how the dialogue develops as we speak, as I look at the questions coming in. But I want to mention something, because the reason why accountability came to me at that moment was because I remember when there were some changes that looked to be a little bit soft. And I know Russ had mentioned the Halt thing that's going on in New York. And I remember people saying, where is the damn accountability? And I was like, that is a great word, because, having said that, accountability for me is not a punitive thing. It's just the right thing. If you want to teach people to do the right thing, they got to be accountable for their actions at all times. Just like I hold my kids accountable. Accountable is definitely in the middle between the punitive and the rehabilitative. And when people are doing stuff that are too soft, a good question to ask is, okay, guys, I see what you're doing, but you got to bring it back here a little bit more, because I don't see accountability. I think that's a question that on all levels, when they start going to the soft side, we could always bring back to the core values by starting to embrace that word. Accountability. Where is the accountability? Again, Joe, I want to get your thoughts on that too. What's your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you got to have accountability. If you lose accountability, you lose your foothold on everything you work for. And Dave and Sandy kind of hit it on the head too. Today's inmates are a hell of a lot different than the inmates back from the early 2000s and the 1990s. Back then, those were true convicts who were kind of resigned to doing their time and not making any waves, getting a little time in the craft shop, maybe learning some stuff in school, getting a GED, a little bit of college. That was kind of unheard of back then. And as time progressed, things kind of started to lean pretty heavily towards the rehabilitation side. And, now between state laws and agency policies and outside influences, we have leaned so heavily to the rehabilitation side that at some point we've kind of lost accountability of our own facilities. Yeah. We kind of drifted away from the true goal of why we were there. And, I guess you can kind of equate it to, today's parents that you see in a grocery store that, the kid's screaming his head off and, the mother or the father's trying to coax the kid verbally, talking to him like a 2-year-old and trying to calm him down and tell him he's going to put him in the timeout versus, when we were little and did that, the first thing we seen was the back of our parents' hands as we flew across a grocery store. Accountability back then was instant, whereas accountability nowadays is kind of gradual. We will gradually get there at some point. It's just not instant like it was for us. So, without accountability, you start to lose grasp on your true concepts and your true goals and your missions of what your agencies and your facilities are supposed to do. So, we've got to have some sort of accountability, for the offender population, for our employees, for parolees. There's got to be accountability. Without accountability, you have chaos.
Yeah, and I love how Joe also put the employees. Obviously, I think that's great. We're obviously, yes, our employees have to also be held accountable because, again, if you're not holding your employees accountable, then you can't hold the inmates accountable because they're looking at our behaviors too and how we deal with our own negative behavior. But again, just kind of bring adaptability to a bit of a close. This is a time where you have to be able to adapt and adjust, but you have to understand where we're headed and what's expected. If you don't know what's expected, if there's no structure in what it is that you're trying to accomplish, then to me, the adaptability is going to serve no purpose because you don't know what it is you're trying to get to. I remember reading something recently. As I said, to me, adaptability is really connected to creativity. Adaptability is related to creativity, but creativity still has to have some structure in corrections. You have to know where you want to be because if you don't have an end game and you go in without knowing the end game, you're lost. So even though you're scrambling, you're not getting nowhere. But I will tell you one thing, and I know this for a fact. If you go in and you know where you want to be, you may scramble to try to figure out how to get something there, but you at least know where you want to be and you'll never be lost. That's the key. So again, adaptability 100%, but have some structure. You cannot go in blindly. You have to kind of know what it is that you want to accomplish and then go ahead and, don't let the situation control you. You control the situation. And if you don't know, what the end result is of the situation you're trying to get to, the situation will have its control over you. So I think adaptability definitely is something you need in today's correctional environment. All right, so let's get to this one, Russ. Emotional intelligence and empathy.
All right. So this is the one that's, it's really hard to teach, but it is teachable. And it also is one that, we have to use in order to do a lot of the necessary skills that we have going on in corrections, like deconfliction and de-escalation and things like that. When we look at things like empathy, people always just miss the point completely on what empathy is because they always think that's that's putting yourself at the emotional disposal of the inmate in order so he can get over on you, and that's not what empathy is at all. I was just involved in a thing with Duty Ron where I was posting some of his stuff that was going on with this killing that happened in Idaho. And there were a lot of people in a lot of these, little forums and stuff. And they were just saying, well, I don't understand what the motive is. I don't understand what the motive is. And these are people that have absolutely no empathy for the killer. All right. So what does that sound like? People go, well, you shouldn't have empathy. No, it just means that you understand what that person is looking at the world through their lens. You shouldn't have sympathy for them, but you can understand that a psychopath is going to see the world in a completely different way than the way you understand it. And you're not projecting your emotions. You're not projecting your values or your system into them. You're simply understanding. So bringing it back away from that extreme example that I just gave, and just looking at, so how should we view the inmates? And the way that we should view the inmates is we should just try and understand, okay, they are here against their will, obviously. There's a reason that we have them there, because society says this is a better option than letting them roam wild. Well, what are they going through? Well, they're not out there with their family. They're also not out there doing crimes, though. So what are the things that we can bring to the table to help them deal with that? If we're helping them deal with their issues in an emotionally intelligent way, and this is big picture thinking, we can reduce the number of incidents that they're involved in, both at the STG level and both at the personal level, where they're just taking it out on staff. Because two of the biggest things that we have to, attack the inmates on, not physically, is the whole idea behind, entitlement and justification and their whole power orientation. And if we can do that, we can make inroads. Now, whether that's going to translate towards something in the reentry and rehabilitation thing of that not reoffending, I kind of doubt that, but I think that we can make the prison safer. So, like I say, I have my doubts about, one edge of it, but the other edge of it, as far as safety and security, big picture can actually help bring the temperature down in a way that we're better able to effectively deal with incidents.
Hey guys, I have a question from Eric. So after we do the emotional intelligence, I'm going to take a second to answer Eric's question and go back to the soft skills. He has a very good question, but I still want to finish up the emotional intelligence. But I do love his question. I want to get to that. But real quick, part of also emotional intelligence is having control of your own emotions. For me, and this is hard sometimes, but you have to listen to me. You can't take this personal. Because again, this profession isn't a win-loss. You cannot take your job where you have this position of authority and always look for the win, because sometimes you're going to lose. I mean, most of the time you're going to lose something, especially what corrections is heading right now. But it's not going to be a win-loss. You can't look at it that way. This is more of a strategic game where you're in for the long run. You don't, it's all right. You don't need every little battle to win the war. You just need the right battle to win the war. So part of your emotion intelligence, I'll give you an example when it comes to writing charges and an inmate wins a charge over you. Okay. I know some people will chase the charge, not to learn from it, because I get sometimes people may want to learn what they could do better so the charge sticks. Sometimes they chase it because they get so upset that the charge didn't stick. And then they become emotional. Then they start writing up every little thing. And now a lot of their charges aren't sticking. And then they start losing credibility because they're upset because they couldn't get that one win. And when you ask them, like, that's bullshit. How could that inmate beat the charge? Like, hold on, take a breather. This is not a win-loss. This is what Simon Sinek would call an infinite game. At the end of the day, this is not about a win-loss. It's about just how long can you stay in? How long can you stay in? Because in the end, I will guarantee you this, guys, they can get all the small battles. It's going to happen, guys. But we just have to be strategic and get the ones that count. That's all that matters to me. Get the ones that count. So again, even if I lose 4 out of 5 charges, the 5th one, it's going to stick. It's going to stick for the right reasons, not because I'm chasing it, because I've seen people run on their emotions, and at the end of the day, they just wind up losing credibility. So again, that's just an example of just having control of your emotions when dealing with the inmate population, because one more thing, they want you to lose control of your emotions. I want people to know that. They want to get you mad. They want you to explode. And at the end of the day, they get the victim card and you're out of a job, and the facility loses thousands upon millions of dollars, maybe thousands upon thousands of dollars. So again, just know your emotions, know when to back away, and just basically just don't let your emotions control your decision making. Okay, Joe, what's your thoughts on emotional intelligence and empathy?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with Russ. As far as the empathy part of it, it's basically seeing their point of view. It's not that you agree with it, but it's the ability to understand other people's outlooks through the lenses. Um, that having the intelligence to know the difference is definitely a plus. When it comes to making your decisions and interacting with the offender population, for me, it was like a 30-year game of chess. The more patient you are, the better off you'll be. You'll make better decisions. You won't make emotions based off of your feelings on your sleeve. It's just an all around better game. Especially and you brought up the subject of the disciplinaries. That's probably the best example given, because I've had officers stress themselves out damn near to a stroke over a minor disciplinary that didn't stick. I mean, I've had I've had officers chase me down in Walmart when they've spotted me wanting to know why I didn't stick. I'm like, I just want to get some Cocoa Puffs and go home. I don't, if it concerns you that badly that you have to chase your lieutenant down across the damn Walmart while brother's just trying to get a bag of Cocoa Puffs, then you're over emotional about your job, and it's not a good thing. And I used to tell them, a butthole today is going to be a butthole tomorrow. If you don't get them today, there's always going to be another opportunity. I never, even when I was a lieutenant, there's been times where I wrote disciplinaries and the criteria just wasn't there and the captain had to dismiss it. Not a big thing. 3 weeks later, I wound up getting the same inmate because his visitor was bringing in drugs, and I got a 2-for-1 special. I win. So it just be patient. Don't let your emotions dictate how you perform your duties. Because you get over emotional or you get emotionally charged up, man, you'll start making mistakes, and those mistakes can cost the safety and security of the institution. It can cost your subordinates physical safety.
I remember one of the senior officers I worked with, when an inmate tried to play that game when I worked at the female facility, they kind of told the officer, haha, like sort of like I beat your charge. And the officer goes, all right, I'm not that invested in it. Like, not, and he didn't mean it like where he's not doing his job. He did his job, wrote the charge, but the outcome was out of his control. So, and he wrote good charges. I mean, he followed the criteria, did what he had to do, but sometimes they're subjective sometimes, and sometimes it goes your way, or most of the time it may not. So when he said he wasn't that invested in it, it's like, are you thinking of commitment? He's like, no, I'm not chasing after the outcome. I know what I did was correct. If the person beats the charge, they beat the charge. But that inmate that made that remark wants that reaction. So it's like, I did what I had to do. I was invested when I wrote the charge. But at this point, I'm not that invested in the outcome because I don't have control of that. And again, he was one of my training people, so he knew how to write a charge. But you also got to realize something too: the people that are hearing the charge, you may not be there presenting your case. They're just reading it, and then the inmate presents a case. They buy into it for whatever reason, probably not for the right reasons, and they let the inmate go. Okay, so before we go to the next softer skill, I want to answer Eric's question. I thought this was a pretty cool question. So a little off topic, but still relates to what we do in the profession. What's the balance between not placing the focus on our past mistakes and ignore them completely? So can I start off with this? I think it's a great question. So if I may, so you're going to make mistakes in this profession. When you first come in, the mistakes are going to weigh heavier because you don't have enough positive experiences to compare. So when you make a mistake as a rookie, it could be detrimental. So again, that's when your support should come in and help you get through it. Because if I don't have past successes, when I make a mistake at the very beginning of my career, it could be detrimental to me because I have no way to kind of balance, my potential. Again, I can make a mistake now 20 years in, and I can I fucked up, but it won't be as bad with me. I know I can still do the job. Again, because I have enough successes to lean on. But for me, I look at everything as growth, and we're going to get to that. But it's a great question that you asked, Eric, because you know what? One of the softer skills, so I might as well cross into it now or next, is the growth mindset. failures or successes should be utilized in an effort to move forward with more confidence, not an effort to hold you back. So I wouldn't ignore a mistake that I made. I would try to embrace it and see what I could do to move forward. I think Denzel Washington said it best when he says, he says that, you know what, people get so afraid to take risk and they try to look for a fallback plan. He goes, it's nothing to do with falling back. It's more about falling forward. You can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to make mistakes. You just have to know that, how can I learn from it? So for me, the only way I would not look, if the past event was holding me back to some extent, I'm going to analyze it a little bit, but I'm going to do every effort to learn from it. I mean, that's the key. And that's in my mind. That's the questions that I ask that keep me moving forward. I don't look at my past mistakes as something that's going to stop me from moving forward. I look at that as, okay, now I know that, I'm not going to do that again. Or, you know what, now that I know that, I'm going to try to do it this way. But the moment your past mistakes are stop moving you from moving forward, then you got to start kind of asking yourself what questions or how you're evaluating that in your mind, and why is it stopping you from not learning from what that failure, that mistake actually has to offer. So for me, what's the balance between not placing the focus on your past mistakes and ignoring them? I think that your mistakes are where you grow the most. You know, a lot of people grow more from mistakes. They're able to embrace it, not from it, not blame someone else. I mean, they really have to be able to take onus of that mistake, take onus of that responsibility. You can truly learn. And by the way, a little softer side of corrections right now, but hear me out. When you want people to be innovative, they're going to take risks. So mistakes are going to be made. So again, I know people may look at the consequences and judge mistakes by the consequences, but having said that, guys, some level of vulnerability does help us grow, but it's on us and how we utilize that to build our confidence. So for me, I'm not going to say I'm afraid to make a mistake. I think there's always going to be some level of fear. Again, fear is healthy, guys. I don't think fear is a bad thing. It keeps you on your toes as long as it doesn't freeze you. Like, I don't want to go to work and make a mistake, but if a mistake happens, I have to keep my mindset right. And the first thing I have to ask myself is, holy shit, how can I be better next time? I cannot allow for that mistake to set in and stop me from moving forward. And again, just one last thing, that's where you also need support, because everybody knows we all can make mistakes. So the last thing you want to do is ridicule a person for making the mistake, because once you make a mistake, you have to separate yourself from the situation to some extent to where you don't see yourself as a failure. Because here's another thing, guys, and this is the unique thing about how we see things. If Joe makes a mistake, let's just say, and bear with me, guys, because I'm going to explain a thought, but it makes sense. If Joe makes a mistake, I look at Joe, I don't know his intent. I just see the mistake and I judge him based on his actions. So when Joe makes a mistake, Joe's a fucking idiot. It has nothing to do with the situation. Joe's an idiot. When I make a mistake, because I know my intent, I'm not an idiot. It's not personal. It's situational. It's, you know, I don't know what the hell Russ was doing. That's why it fucked me up, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that how we see ourselves, like I just said, it's situational and the person's not an idiot, is how we should help our people and basically give them the benefit of the doubt and coach them through it. Because at the end of the day, guys, recovering from a mistake could literally be the biggest learning point of your career. But if you choose not to embrace it and you choose to see it as strictly as a failure that you cannot move forward from, you're going to lose out on probably the greatest tool when it comes to growing, in my opinion. So again, if you make a mistake, not that you want to make mistakes, but if you do, try to find a way to embrace them, in my opinion. And I would like to get your thoughts on that. I thought that was a great question from Eric. I kind of held on a pedestal a little bit, but Russ, I'd like to get your thoughts on that question as well as Joe, because I know there's a lot of people that deal with that and are afraid to make those mistakes. And this is corrections. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah. You know, the thing that we do in corrections is we do make mistakes, and then we try and find a way to correct and make sure that we don't make that same mistake again. We also, in the day-to-day, everything that we do, you know, things happen that are suboptimal outcomes that aren't mistakes. And if we categorize them as a mistake, we can hold ourselves back, because the thing about this particular profession is that not everything is going to turn out perfect all the time. And so if you if you decide that, well, it didn't turn out perfect because I made a mistake, you're going to hold yourself back. You have to be able to distinguish the difference between what a suboptimal outcome is and a mistake. And by the same token, you shouldn't look at successes that you have that happen to have a good outcome or an optimal outcome that was luck based rather than skill based. So that's my 2 cents.
Wait, hold on. You can't ignore what you just said real quick, because that's important too. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people that overgeneralize, they basically I don't want my words getting wrong, but they over exaggerate, I guess, their skill based on luck. And I think people that are very insightful, that know who they are, they understand that, holy shit, thank God that worked out correctly, because I was pretty lucky. But you're right about that. That is spot on, man.
But it happens a lot in corrections, though, you know. So we always have to go back, and we should be doing after action reviews, even if it's only for ourselves, on our successes, not just our failures, and not just our things that, you know, were neutral based or whatever. Because if we start believing our own press, that's when we can actually have prior successes generate a complacency that can be catastrophic in the end. And so being able to actually get in there and analyze what you've done, why you did what you did, and whether or not you have the resources to back it up, and whether it was a smart move, and whether or not we took time to make sure that there was, you know, a component of risk versus reward calculated into what we did. You know, you can end up hurt, you know, and we can end up hurt no matter what. But my point about that is it's a risk business. And we have to be able to mitigate those risks, but we're never going to make them go all the way away. So when we're deciding, hey, I'm going to take this risk and do this, we have to decide, you know, what we can do to make sure that it's not just tombstone courage. I'm going to go in there and, you know, I'm going to kick ass on 20 inmates. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I want to add just with Russ real quick what he just said, guys. Kind of before we get to Joe with this, when it comes to making a mistake, you know, at the end of the day, and I'm kind of reiterating it, but if you don't embrace that mistake and try to make an effort to move forward, you will keep yourself trapped from growing into your potential. Because like Russ said, and I just want to reiterate, this career, you are going to take risk, and management have to understand the difference between a calculated risk, I mean, literally a risk based on good intent, and a risk that's just negligent and foolish, you know, because you're going to have people that are going to be innovative and they're going to try something new and they're doing it for the right reasons. And you can't treat them the same as someone who could give two shits, you know, because you want innovation. You know, you want people to take some level of calculated risk. And by the way, that's a word that's scary to say in corrections, because people could twist it when I say you want people to take risk. Gangi, in this fucking profession, guys, we need to grow. So I'm going to add a little something before that to soften it up. But do I want people to take risk? Yes. I'll soften it up by saying calculated risk, but yes. Go ahead, Russ.
You know, walking through the gate in the morning at corrections, that's a risk. You know, there's no way to do this job without taking risks. But you know, and that's why we have, you know, policy and procedure and things like that, though, to guide us, to tell us what the acceptable risks are.
Yeah. So again, let's real quick, so we don't blind ourselves here, or there's still a structure behind that risk. Kind of going back to the adaptability, there's still a structure. You know, Russ said it perfectly clear. There's an end game in mind, you know, the policy, the end game, you know, but sometimes situations don't always easily apply to a policy you're trying to employ. So you could have people so afraid to move because they're more concerned of the consequences of a novel action that they won't do anything. And it's like, hey, guys, that's on management now. It's like, hey, wait a second, guys, hold on. You know, maybe that guy was afraid to make the effort to solve the problem because he couldn't see it in the policy or the procedures what to do, so they were afraid to go off script. And that's a problem. When you got your force afraid to make a decision because they're more concerned about the consequences behind that decision as opposed to just, I got to do something, then management has to revisit their style because, again, I'm going to use the word calculated risk, but when we're talking about a field where you have to be constantly innovative because the inmates are really innovative, especially when you work in facilities where they're limited resources. Guys, the more people are limited in resources, the more innovative they become. So if you don't allow for your staff to be innovative, to basically embrace some level of calculated risk and effort to grow, then what's going to happen is your staff comes down here and your inmates, they're just smarter than your staff because your staff's afraid to move based on consequences, but the inmates, they don't give a shit. They don't care. And now your staff, they don't know what to do because the inmates are moving up and then you're putting a lid on your staff's capability to respond. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? Because there's a lot there too.
Yeah, I mean, everything about this job is a calculated risk. Every day, you're making the decision every day. Being attacked by a cat here, making a decision every day.
What is he doing?
To, I don't know. He's trying to cause a riot on the rec yard.
Joe, your cat's going to get me banned. There he goes. Because he was showing some improper stuff. He's not even dressed.
That's my medium custody kitty right there.
Guys, basically, that's exactly how Joe looks if he stands up when he's not on Zoom. When he's on Zoom.
Just a little less hair. But, everything that we do in this profession is a calculated risk. Every day we take that chance. You can't be afraid to make a decision and go with it. Especially when it's something where it's, outside, either not so much outside the guidelines of policy, but in that gray area where nothing really addresses it, and it demands an immediate decision. Make the decision. I'd rather have somebody make a decision and screw it up than not make a decision at all. And if you make the wrong decision, learn from it. That's, experiences are based on bad decisions. That's what we learn from is, our decisions, either the right ones or the wrong ones. So we teach ourselves what works, what doesn't work. And if you're one of the people that makes a bad decision and you get a little bit of heat for it, man, don't dwell on it. Learn from it and drive on. Don't stew on it, because you got two types of individuals that, when you address a bad decision, depending on what the intent was, if it was a minor intent, minor infraction with a good intent, the way you address it is key, from a supervisor to a subordinate. If you're the subordinate, don't dwell on it, because you got some that will learn from their experiences and drive on, and you got some that will dwell on that forever and a day and, get the attitude, well, fuck it. If I made a bad decision, I'm not going to make any more decisions.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do and go home. That's not the type of people we want to employ. We want people who want to make the decisions. If you make a wrong decision, I've always been the type of supervisor that I always want to hear your side of it first, because I want to know what your intent was. And if your intent was true and you had the right frame of mind making that decision, I can go with that. But I'm going to explain to you why it was a bad decision. So, life's full of decisions. If we didn't make a decision, hell, we wouldn't be able to live every day.
All right. And I want to say, so, we kind of touched on the fundamental attribution error, which is basically, for ourselves, when we make a mistake, we judge our intent over the situation, or over, we judge our intent over our personality. Like, basically, this guy's not an idiot. Like if I make a mistake, it wasn't my fault. It's situational. Where if someone else makes a mistake, they're an idiot. It has nothing to do with the situation. But part of that is also the intent behind it all. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe the person had the right intent, and this is just the outcome. We have to realize something. Sometimes good intent doesn't have the outcome we want, but that doesn't mean that the outcome was wrong. It just means that it didn't fit with what we needed done, but the intent made sense. I've dealt with that. I've had officers that really are excellent at what they do. And when we perceive that they made a mistake, the first thing we ask as management is, well, hold on, maybe it's not a mistake. Let's see what their intent was, what they were trying to accomplish, and let's see if there's something that we're doing wrong first. Again, because sometimes, I'll be honest with you guys, policy, it should never be written in stone. And sometimes people can see a situation totally different than we do on Monday morning. So I want to know, what did you see? I love what Joe said. I want to know, what did you see and why did you commit to that action? And then for the people that I got to defend my employee to, they could be very outcome driven. They could do it based on what happened. And it's like, okay, guys, I know you saw this happen, but let me tell you why this happened. And I'll go ahead and back up the staff that made that decision without having to say, well, the decision was wrong, because it may not have been wrong. The officer's intent was this, but unfortunately it went this way. But I want to be careful when I say that. This is crazy, guys, but hear me out. I don't want to judge a decision being right or wrong based on the outcome.
Exactly. I just wanted to, get back on that, because that's one thing, I've talked about that in the past, when we have these, outcome driven, I don't know what the exact word I'm looking for, but when we have an outcome driven basis for the way that we look at a particular situation, we can completely screw it up, because then we just give someone a pass on potentially behavior that could have, turned out all bad. The same thing that happens, and it happens a lot. And I'll just, I hate to, dig into my own past here too much, but when we see things that happen, especially with regards to use of force, we go out there, we're expected to take immediate and sometimes violent action in order to stop something much worse from happening, or stop someone innocent, including yourself, from being hurt. And so we go out there and we actually, engage the suspect, the perpetrator, the inmate, and suddenly things go much better than expected from one point of view. And your intent wasn't necessarily to, hurt the individual or put them in the hospital, but the outcome that they see is only that. Whereas if you did the exact same thing under the exact same conditions, and there was a minimal amount of damage, for instance, and I'm only picking on use of force because it's easy to see it this way, and then no one bats an eye, well, why aren't they batting an eye? It's because they're looking at the outcome instead of the application of policy, procedure, law, and case law.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you, Russ. Even Dr. Harry stated here, and we did a show on this. If you ever get a chance, Dr. Harry Drayton, for us, it's the flexibility in the procedure that defines the outcome of the policy. Because having said that, if I vary in procedure, because let's say a situation occurs and now I have to adapt and adjust to the procedure, that's something we could have mentioned with adaptability, because most of the time when situations occur, you're trying to squeeze things into a policy that really, it's so dated. Because again, you have a force that's afraid to take risks, so you're not evolving the policy when you should be. Like, a new situation occurs and we're trying to, fix the situation to an older policy. And I always tell people, hey guys, the procedure may have to adjust. That's why supervisors have some level of discretion, but the policy still said this. I didn't violate policy. The end of the day was I had to bring it to here. I used some discretion in the procedure because it didn't fit anymore. And then you go back to the drawing, and then it's like, because I would hate supervisors that will come up and literally say, Gangi, the procedure says this. I said, I know. Trust me, I know. But it didn't work. So I had to use my discretion. And maybe now, as a good manager, you go back and look at the procedure. I don't like the fact that, we get so stuck with how the procedure works, when I'm going to be honest with you guys, this may sound crazy, but really, in my opinion, and I guess I have 20 years in, so I maybe a little biased to this. a lot of the decisions we make are common sense decisions that we wind up complexing through policy and procedure because we're more concerned about liability, that we just start overwhelming the system with memos and memos and memos, and we're removing the common sense out of it. And when you finally read the policy, it's like, oh shit, that's what this fucking 12-page policy just pretty much said, just do this. But we made it so complex that people don't know what common sense is anymore, because you're like, oh, I just did this. Well, what does policy say? You know what, to be honest with you, I didn't have time to read 12 pages. The right thing was staring me right in front of my face. So I don't want, yes, I get there's liability, guys. I got to be careful when I say this. I want to make sure things are balanced. So hear me out. Yeah, of course, there's got to be some understanding in policy and procedure. I'm not telling people to run rogue, but I want people to be real. I want people to realize something. Don't make it so complex that people are afraid to employ some level of common sense, because every policy and procedure should have some level of common sense to it, because not everything's going to be covered by policy and procedure anyway. But if you make things too complex, people will literally start being afraid to make even simple common sense decisions. And that's when we tend to really realize, like, hey, yo, guys, we're messing up our people here, because this problem that they had could have been simply solved by doing A. And this person literally did not know what to do, because we literally made their actions so complex, because in order for him to do that, it's in like a 12-page policy, when at the end of the day, all he has to do is do this. So again, policy and procedures are great, but let's not also minimize that most of the stuff that we do every day is based on common sense decision-making. Maybe I'll go to Joe and back to Russ, because I saw Russ agreeing, but let me go with Joe on that, and then I want to go back to Russ, because I think, Russ, you have something you want to say on that too, right?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so let me get to Joe first, and then Russ, just to be fair. So my wife's calling me for a second, so I'm going to step out. So Joe, please give your piece, and Russ, just jump right in. I got my wife, we have 2 kids, and when I do a show, she basically has to solo parent, so she never bothers me when I'm doing a show.
You probably walk the door and she's just trying to bring you coffee.
That's true, but highly unlikely.
Or it's the beginnings of a hostage situation.
Well, listen, I hear like it's like 11 o'clock on Eastern Standard. I hear some kids running around right now, so I'll guarantee you it's not to give me coffee. It's like, what the hell? So let me,
baby.
So guys, real quick, I'm going to have Joe and Russ cover the show just briefly while I go save my marriage. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the policies, I mean, there's several ways that the policy can be carried out by different people, and it doesn't mean that everybody's interpretation is wrong. My favorite one to talk about during staff meetings or shift briefings were counts. So you have the officer that would rack everybody up for a count. And then you had the second officer, a second style officer, who would, count the offenders in the day room, especially if there was a football game on or some sort of sporting event, to prevent an uprising because we're taking away from their sports. And, you had the third officer who would walk the runs and do the counts frontward and backwards, in the grand scheme of things, who was wrong? Nobody. Because policy says that you will count a living, breathing body. It doesn't say how you're going to count the living, breathing body. It just says you're going to count those bodies. So, policy flexibility is a must, especially if you're a supervisor. As long as they're within the perimeters of the policy, everybody adapts their own way of doing things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong or they're making a mistake. It just means that my way was different from Gangi's way, and Gangi's way is a little bit different from Russ's way. So, there's got to be some flexibility, especially like, Anthony said, where, if you over complex a policy to the point that people are afraid to make a common sense decision, your policy is pretty much moot at that point, because, who the hell's going to follow it? Always try to keep it as simple as you can. Granted, policies are derived from past mistakes and past boo-boos that we've committed. That's basically how policies are made. But it doesn't mean we have to focus so much on the liability that we're afraid to make a decision. I talked about the count, And the reason why I brought that up was because of the fact that during one event or situation I can remember, the officer that I described that counts the offenders in the day room during count when there's a sporting event on, instead of racking everybody up, they'll walk the tiers and count everybody in the houses. Then they'll go down to the day room and file them out and then count them back in one by one. During this specific incident, a fight actually took place between two offenders in the day room, and they wanted to smoke the officer. And I'm like, whoa. What are we disciplining the officer for? Well, they didn't count correctly. How did they not count correctly? Policy says that we will count living, breathing bodies. It doesn't say that we rack them up. It doesn't say that we do anything specific. It just says that we count breathing bodies. So why are we disciplining this officer? Because they counted the inmates in the day room. Okay. The inmates were counted. The count cleared. That fight could have taken place at any given time during an ingress, egress. Could have happened in the chow hall. Could have happened in the library. Could have happened in medical. Could have happened anywhere. Fights happen in the penitentiary. They're spontaneous. That's unfortunately it's just the prison life. But the whole thing to that is the officer followed the policy, did what she was supposed to do, did exactly what she did, and followed the policy, cleared her count, and now we want to try to discipline her because her way was different from Russ's way. When we overcomplex policies, we shoot ourselves in the foot. We take away our supervisors' capabilities. We take away the officer's capabilities of making a common sense decision or making any decision and going with it. And then, we shoot ourselves in the foot liability wise by overcomplexing the policies. That's just one thing I just never really agreed with. There's got to be some flexibility. You have to have flexibility.
Yeah. And before we get to Russ real quick, when the facility is so concerned about liability that they look to CYA and drop policy or memo after policy, whatever it is, the problem is that you also stop good officers from doing their jobs. Because, you could have one incident where, let's say, I fucked up. And instead of holding me accountable, you do a generalized memo that the good officers see as punishment. It's like, I didn't do nothing wrong, and now I'm being punished because you don't want to hold Gangi accountable. Like, there's still good officers that do their job. And also, you also got to also think of the likelihood of something. So, yes, when something happens, of course, we always have to be concerned that could happen again. But there are some rare incidences that, yes, it could happen again, but it was rare the first time. And now we're going to put 12 to 15 memos out over an incident that may not happen again, but we're so concerned it will. And it's like, hey, guys, there must have been, the stars were aligned like so perfectly for this one thing to happen. And an inmate saw a weakness and they pounced. But having said that, 6 things. Remember, a jail operates on, or prisons operate on fail-safe after fail-safe after fail-safe. There's like 20 fail-safes. So, usually when something goes wrong, multiple fail-safes have fallen. But sometimes it's really, it's crazy. Sometimes there's some instances where just the stars perfectly aligned. And then it's like, oh, shit, if that happened, it can happen again. Let's toss out 20 memos. This guy's, hold on. What's the likelihood of that really happening again? Can this be a retraining issue or whatever it is? Because we're going to make it more complex, and the officers that are doing their job, they start becoming disenfranchised because the problem is they want to be empowered. And every time you produce a memo for liability, you disenfranchise people that need to be empowered. Remember that. A memo takes away the officer's ability to feel empowered. So you want to try to delegate authority, not just delegate tasks and have them be micromanaged throughout the process. And again, the big thing here is the more memos, the more you lose out on common sense. Russ, Baguette, I know you had something you wanted to say on that. Well, I only see half your... Oh, by the way, I'll tell you what happened upstairs. I know everybody's concerned. My wife is watching Big Bang Theory, and she wanted to see me, show me a scene. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I think I lost my place. So I just wanted to go back to where we're talking about complexity, and then people having a hard time with it, especially in an emergent situation. If you look back at some of the things that were really being done in all of law enforcement, through the 80s and 90s, even till today, you basically had two different types of use of force policies. You had force options and you had force continuums, right? And the force continuums were these big, long chain events of what you could do and when you could do it and when you had to drop down. And they were so complex that you had a hard time figuring it out when you were not in an emergency situation. And then the other design of use of force policies was the force option model. And the force option model just said, basically you had, lethal, less than lethal, and a couple of little things that had to go along with some of the less than lethal stuff and some of the lethal stuff so that you could make much faster decisions and not have to think all the way through these long chains of logic that they were giving for people. And so that was just the best example that I could come up with to kind of illustrate what we've been talking about here. Because even though it may not be in the use of force policy, when we're talking about policy and procedures and things like that, man, if there's a huge, written policy and it's complex and you have to think about it, man, when the shit hits the fan, it's so much harder to try and think what you should actually do. That's why the simpler, the more basic we make things, the better off we're always going to be, in my opinion.
I love what Harry says. It's agreement with you. Some situations are so fluid that policies either no help due to vagueness or hampers the officer by boxing them in.
That's it right there. Bingo.
Yeah, Harry kind of agreed spot on with what you were saying. All right, so we're going to go. Guys, keep free asking those questions a little off topic. We're fine with that. So I'm going to go back to the next softer skill. Might as well keep it in line about failures.
Do we have any other questions?
Let me see if they're coming in. As of now, I don't see anymore. But if they are coming in, I'll put them right in. You have my word, because the questions are they're awesome. So the next softer skill I have, and it kind of goes with what Eric said. We talked about the failures, is having a growth mindset. So again, we'll kind of speed through this. And guys, send me a question, guys. If it's a little off topic, we're here to help. But real quick about having a growth mindset. In corrections, guys, you're going to be faced with so many situations that you have to have an open mind going in. You have to be willing to learn. And the funny thing is, you have to observe with no judgment. That was a big thing that was taught to me when I was a rookie. Don't be afraid to ask why. Don't be afraid to be curious. That's what it is. Look to be curious over looking to judge. If you're walking next to a senior officer, take advantage of those moments, because they could share with you things that took them a lifetime to learn, that they're willing to share with you in the matter of 10 minutes. I mean, it's crazy when someone shares something with you, and then when you go to ask them, how did they learn it? And then you realize the sacrifices that they were made, that were made for them to learn that lesson that they're now teaching you for free. But most people may come in with a closed mindset, thinking that they're better than the people that they're working next to, who have done the job for 20 something years. We have a different generation coming in that some of them feel very entitled. And when they're walking next to a senior officer, or a senior staff member, they don't give the person the credit for the 20 years of experience that they've gained, but rather I could do their job. Guys, never discredit someone who walks the walk and that is going to share with you some knowledge from their firsthand experience. Because even when I grew up in this profession, I always knew right from the get-go, only because I really start with having respect for people just in general, by the way. So having a respect for people will do great in this profession. Inmates, officers, staff, whatever, is just having a respect for people and having a respect for their time. Because when someone sits down with you and gives you 10 minutes of knowledge, whatever it is, 15 minutes of knowledge, there's nothing more valuable and irreplaceable than time. And when you have a senior officer that's getting ready to sit down and chat with you for about 15 or 20 minutes to give you some good, hardcore, solid advice, you got to shut up and listen, because at that point this is their time. But on the other avenue too, senior officers, listen to the new boots too, because that's how we're innovative. They could see things that you may not be able to see because their eyes are fresh. So the growth mindset is really for both parties to embrace. And at the end, a growth mindset doesn't get stuck in failure, but also doesn't get stuck in success either. All because it worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work today. So they're always looking to learn. And at the end of the day, they're always looking to better themselves. And they always have this isn't always in their back of their mind. they always know that they always know that they're not the smartest person in the room. That's the best way to learn. When you go into a room, a meeting, whatever it is, humble yourself and know you're not the smartest, and allow yourself to be open-minded and listening to what other people have to say. So eventually, in my mind, you can build from the other people's experiences and just become better. Because even Russ will tell you, and I'll have Russ go first and then Joe, Russ learned stuff on his last day when he didn't have to. It's his last fucking day, you know? You know that there, I want to say it was Theodore Roosevelt, but don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it was Theodore Roosevelt, but maybe someone else will know better. But there was a president that on his deathbed, he was still reading a book because learning never stopped. So, and I want to say it was Roosevelt, but someone may know better, but I think it was Roosevelt. But either way, it is true. There was a president who literally was dying, still trying to finish a book because in his mind, you never stop growing. So, I mean, think about that. But Russ, I'll go with you first, Russ. I mean, I remember you telling me even the last day you learned something new, but you know, how important it is to have that growth mindset.
Yeah, you know, if your mindset is that you're going there each and every day and you're carrying out your duties and you're doing all that, it's great. All right. But it's self-limiting. You know, I think that a person should be in there each and every day, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, and making sure that they grow in some way. It may be personal growth. It may be professional growth. It just may be a curiosity about things, maybe a curiosity about the gang lifestyle. Whatever it is, that enriches the experience that you have. And if you have enriching experiences, well, it's not going to be every day, but if it can be most days, then you're going to enjoy your job. And if you enjoy your job, you're going to be efficient and proficient at it. I've seen so many officers that, I mean, they would tell you straight out, man, I hate the job. I hate being here. I hate every single minute. And they were neither efficient nor proficient in anything that they were doing because they lacked a love for the profession. And so it led to that inefficiency and that improficiency. So the way that I carried on into it is my very last day. You know, I was still, you know, looking at everything in a critical light, still always trying to better myself, managed to come up with finding a shank on my very last day. And that was something that I wanted to do. You know, I always faced that man in the mirror who was a very stern taskmaster and always trying to prove that none of what had happened to me in the past was sheer luck. There had to be some talent in there somewhere.
I love that, Russ, because that's spot on. I like Anthony said, being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional. Roger Crawford. I love that. Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on growth mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you know everything that Russ said. That you know you got to be able to grow in your ability, not just you know in the ability to do the job, but your abilities as a person. You know, everybody grows. There's always something new to learn. You know, I mean, in 30 years, I learned so much, probably in my first 4 years of my career, just by, you know, looking at the people that had those, you know, 5, 6, 7, and 8 stripes on their sleeves. You know, that knowledge. You know, how did you come up with that decision? And when they take the time to just, you know, to actually talk to you and give you the information and give you the knowledge that they learned by making their mistakes, not only does it make them a better person for passing that information to you, but it also gives you something else to put in your toolbox to use, you know, later on down the road, should that situation present itself. You know, you got to have the ability for personal growth. You got to have the ability for professional growth, you know, and being able to adapt one way or the other is, you know, it's very important. It's, you know, even though, you know, some of these policies are vague, you know, going in with the mindset and with a clear understanding that the decision I make can have an effect on not only my life, but my coworkers' lives, maybe an offender's life. If you stop long enough to realize that before you make a decision, you're already growing.
Yeah.
People are too quick to just go in and shoot from the hip without, thinking about the big picture and the consequences later on down the line. And some just don't care. But if you can go into a correctional facility and go into a situation with those thoughts in your mind, then you've already grown. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and look, just Gideon Liddy, I think he's from Canada. Maybe it's generational. I get young officers get offended when you try to pass on your wisdom of doing the job after years in. And I'll be honest with you. Here's my biggest concern with what Gideon Yiddy's saying. And I have a question coming my way. Someone's going to message us because they don't want their name, but they have a question for us. So I'm waiting. They're going to send me a message. But real quick, with what Gideon Yiddy said about the young generation. So, guys, the core values are connected to the older officers who had the wisdom, which is basically wisdom's applied knowledge, technically. So when we start kind of minimizing the importance of what the senior officers are saying, we do lose out on the core values, because to me, the core values of what I do in this profession was taught to me by the senior officers. Even though it was kind of mentioned to me in the academy, the senior officers are what I saw as when it was actionable. Again, I see, for me, my best way of learning something is it goes beyond what someone says. Is it actionable? So for me, the core values were taught to me by the senior officers. And I believe it or not, when they had those core values in place, and that was the foundation, there was a finesse with the softer skills. And then when you go to chat with them, it's like, well, how are you so good at what you do? How do you maneuver like that? It's because even though they're experienced, and that's obviously a big part of it, they were able to balance the core values with those skills. And that came through time. So to not take time to listen to the people that have walked that walk and found a way to balance this tricky profession. I mean, I've literally seen, as I said, officers or senior staff, they move on a unit and they got instant control. And that did not come through a passive career. That came from someone that was intentionally learning every day and then takes a second to talk to you. And then you go ahead and minimize what they go to teach you, because at the end of the day, maybe you think that this profession is beneath you, or you're better than the person teaching you who's been doing it for 20 years. So don't do that, because you're going to lose out on the most important part of this profession, which literally are the core values and techniques that have kept these people going for the course of 20, 25 years. The next soft skill, and I do have a question coming my way, guys. Let's just do this one real quick. Communication skills. So I'll start with Joe first and then go to Russ, kind of like alternate it back and forth. But obviously, guys, this is probably the best skill to have in corrections, which is something that I've been able to employ. That's done me very well in my career. But go ahead, Joe. How important is communication skills?
Man, communication is probably one of the top skills. If you can't communicate effectively and efficiently, there's going to be problems. You got to be able to communicate to your staff. You got to be able to communicate to the offender population. You got to be able to communicate with your administration. You got to have communication skills, regardless of whether you're an officer, sergeant, lieutenant. You got to have some sort of communication skills. That's 100%. To me, it's probably one of the most important abilities in an officer or a supervisor, the ability to communicate. Can you communicate effectively? Can you communicate swiftly? When somebody is bringing me information, I want to know that it's, 100% fact, 100% truthful. I want to know that everything's been looked at prior to bringing it to me. So communication is very key in corrections, very key. The wrong sentence, the wrong word, the wrong interpretation, can lead to chaos in corrections if it's not communicated correctly. So yeah, to me, communication skills is at the top of the charts. between communications and report writing. Those are probably my two top.
Which is still, report writing is still communication.
Yeah, verbally.
Yeah, verbally and written.
But you got to admit, you've seen them reports too, Gangi.
Yeah.
C-spot run and yeah.
And then it's fucked up.
Suspect ran, I bit him. Good dog.
Yeah, like you see Spot run and you don't even have an inmate named Spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on? I mean, Russ, old school. I know old school was. You know what? Let me mention something, Russ, and tell me if this is true, because I actually had the pleasure when I was working at a maximum security prison when I was a sergeant. I worked next to an officer or a lieutenant that started in 1974. So he was on, by the time I got there in 2011, he was just under 40 years. And he said, listen, I know a lot of people think that old school was strictly punitive, but old school was strictly communication. We knew how to talk to these inmates, and those inmates knew how to talk to us. So Russ, I mean, you were in the profession for quite some time. I think you started at the back end of the 80s. You know, I know it may have been considered a punitive system, but I also thought that old school communication was key. There was a respect given from the inmate and the officer that's somewhere lost today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that what you had to see, from the really old school, people that I knew. I mean, like some of the guys that were working at San Quentin when I got there. I mean, they were there, from back in the late '60s and the '70s, and I mean, they saw everything. They saw Black August, the whole 9 yards. And so, there's actually, a great deal of, wealth of knowledge and experience, that I was able to, see and hear about. And, the whole thing about communication is they had their own way, and it worked a lot of the time. I think that back then, for whatever reason, though, is that prisons and jails were much more dangerous. There were elements back then that were, they had their own way of viewing at things. Some of them, were very politically oriented, and so sometimes you would see that in spite of there being kind of this tension of respect, that those boundaries would be crossed. You saw it bleeding all the way over from the 70s, where you used to, see the chants about, kill the pigs and all that bled over into the corrections system as well. But that's not to say that their skill sets and their communication, although different, had its own unique way of dealing with things in the moment. Because you can't go in there and expect, as a correctional officer, that you're going to bargain from a position of strength, because you simply don't have it. If you believe that you are bargaining from a position of strength, you've really missed the mark, and you don't understand the actual peril that you're in. That doesn't mean that there aren't times that we have to be, hard and tough as nails. The communication spectrum, I want to dovetail right back, though, to what Joe said there. Every bit of the communication spectrum is important. So is written communication. The last thing I want to follow up with that is we were talking earlier about reports and, whether or not you're going to lose or win charges. I made sure I always won, because I was going to put everything in there necessary to ensure that I got a conviction on that inmate. And they knew when they were facing me that if it came down to their word or my written word, regardless of whether I was there or not, that was going to carry the day. And so that's just another part of the big picture thinking that I talk about all the time. You don't necessarily have to take it to use of force or physical or threatening or anything else. Sometimes that communication where you tell them, well, do you really want to read about this, is more than enough.
Yeah. And guys, I want you to know, what we just said here basically is communication is just the center of us. I mean, literally communicating with the inmates, communicating with each other. I mean, if the message is not coming in clear or it's coming in ambiguous on all levels, The problem is it's not going to be followed correctly. I mean, the key here with us is that you create a message and then you repeat the message and then you reinforce the message. I mean, I know it may sound crazy, but you can't over communicate a message. I mean, it is what it is. You always have to make sure that everybody leaves understanding what the expectation is. And if that means that you have to repeat it, whatever it is, or have them repeat it back, whatever it is, because here's the funny thing about this all, guys. When it's all said and done, and let's say you're a leader and you got to talk to your people, they got to also have and understand that message because they got to translate it to their people, so clarity from management, clarity amongst the peers, clarity to the inmate population, communication is the center. And I will tell you one thing, as I became a supervisor, I value staff that are good communicators because they de-escalate a lot. And as management, the higher up you go, I like to think you also care about this on the front line as well, but definitely the higher up you go, liability matters. And I love when something is settled without a cell extraction or a use of force, because I got an officer that has a good rapport or a staff member that has a good rapport that can de-escalate a situation. So never underestimate the power of a good communicator. Trust and believe. It settles a lot of problems, especially, again, if you're a supervisor, just a frontline supervisor, and you get ready to send 5 people into a cell. I mean, to be honest with you, you shouldn't really be pumped up to get 5 people into a cell in the hopes that, you want to use this use of force. It's like you should really make the effort to try to de-escalate unless there's an emergency, and then obviously you have to run in. For me, if I have time and time's allowed, I mean, again, you don't always have the time, but if you have time, you can make an effort to de-escalate, and maybe that could also buy you some time to get ready, but hopefully that person's able to smooth it out. And for me, I find such a great success in that. And here's the sad thing, and I've seen this happen when I was on the floor. You have an officer that does a good job and gets the inmate to comply, and then you get the team that's mad because they wanted to run in. I've seen it. And as a supervisor, I was quick to say, guys, the officer deserves the credit on this one. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to have to run in there. So kudos to the officer. So I think anytime we have a chance to give props to that officer for not having the team go in because they were to de-escalate and get the inmate to comply, well done, and we should appreciate that a little more. I do have a question that came my way. I don't want to say who it's coming from, but I'll ask the question out, and then we'll go back to, I have 2 more soft skills I want to go over before we can run its course. But the question asked this way, I'll send it to, we'll do, who went first last time? Joe. So I'll do Russ first and Joe. Here's the question. After moving to work in a new system, I promoted quickly. Now it's been seen by some of the COs that I haven't paid my dues and may not deserve to promote. How can I overcome what some may call animosity and use my previous experience to help my new institution? So what do you got, Russ? I mean, I have something, but I'll have you go, Russ, and then I'll go with back end.
The very nature of corrections is fraught with this kind of, underlayment of what I call, hate. And there's just some people that no matter what, whether they were, on the promotions list or not on the promotions list or something, they're going to, find some fault with the way you were selected to your new position. They're going to say, oh, you didn't put in the time, or you're on the same softball team with the lieutenant or whatever it is. And so some things are never going to be good enough for them. I think that actually trying to do things to smooth that over in a direct fashion toward them is probably the wrong way to go about it. What I would try to do is I would try and elevate yourself into that position, being a leader that can command the respect, not heavy on the bars, mind you, but command the respect in a way that they know that you're capable of leading them, that you're going to have their back, and that you're going to do what's right. There's always going to be that element, though, that are going to, talk behind your back and find fault. And if you go chasing those things and stamping out little forest fires, you're going to miss the chance to actually make headway in your career.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I went through this at a newer facility when I made rank. I only worked at a female facility, so I went to a male facility. I think people didn't think I was up for it because, again, they compared my experience at a female facility. So what I did, I kind of like what Russ said here, and it did matter to me, was I definitely didn't play my position unless I had to, which was rarely ever, believe it or not. I lead by expectations, and rules are a last resort for me. If I'm pushing on the rules, it's because I can't be constructive anymore, and at that point, I have to play my position because I'm looking towards discipline. But I really did my best first to not let it get to me what they thought, because it's going to happen. It's a new situation for them, so you have to know it's human behavior. They're trying to figure out, and trying to figure out. Most of the time, everybody leans towards the negative because it could be this level of universal precaution that they have. It's corrections where that's just who we are. Sadly, we're cynical by nature. But having said that, I did find time to connect with my people on an individual level. As a supervisor, I would tour a little bit more often and talk to my people when they weren't in a group, and made it about them, not about me. I didn't go in and brag about my experiences at the other facility, because, to be honest with you, they're not ready to even hear that yet. They don't want to hear your ideas right now, because they don't want to hear about your experiences right now, because they're not open-minded just yet, because in their mind, you have to build the respect with them first. And then once you build that respect, then it's great how they'll slowly be interested in your suggestions. But at the get-go, they're not, because all they're going to see is someone that thinks they're better than us, that's telling us we're doing shit wrong, and screw that person. So what I did was I went around and got to know people on an individual basis, and then eventually we're sharing experiences and stories. And next thing you know, you just build that respect on a personal level, and then it just it manifests out. But it wasn't something I did in front of everybody. I just kind of did it one by one. But my advice was, I think kind of Russ touched on it too, is I wouldn't push on who I was yesterday. I wouldn't push that, well, I was a sergeant here, so I could definitely be a sergeant here. No, it's more of, it's my time to connect with the people. Let me tour a little bit more and start to ask them about them. How can I help you? How can I add value? What is it that you want from this profession? Don't make it about you. And then eventually they'll come around, and one day they'll say, hey, Joe, what got you into this profession? And Joe, why the fuck are you in my unit? Because you don't even work in Georgia. You're on Gangi's Tier Talk show. No, I'm kidding. Just went a little sidebar there. But hey, Joe, what's your thought? I think that was good advice. But what's your thought on that question from our buddy?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, if you're the person that got promoted, don't let the consensus drag you down mentally. The only thing you can do is focus on the mission, focus on your people, invest in them, get to know them, know their ins and outs, know their quirks, invest yourself in them personally. And, the biggest thing is, don't think for a second that just because you walk in with rank on your shoulders, you got instant respect. Instant respect is null and void. Even it doesn't matter if you've been a sergeant for 17 years and you decided to promote to lieutenant on year 18, that respect still has to be built amongst the people. That respect is a two-way street. So don't let the people drinking haterade bother you. Focus on the reason why you got promoted. Focus on the mission at hand. Make sure that you invest in your people. Show them you're not afraid to get down and dirty with them. Go out there and sling chow with them if they're locked down. There's been times where I've gone out and swept. We were in lockdown mode, and all the Johnny Sacks were out there on the runs, and the officer was kind of overwhelmed with doing something else at the moment, and I was free, so I'd grab a broom and go sweep a run off. Don't be afraid to get out there with your people. Being newly promoted is scary in itself. because you done stepped off into the, oh shit, what do I do now factor. You know, and that's where you find out that, you know, where your true loyalty lays. The people that used to kick it with you as a CO, if you see them shy away from you once you make supervisor, then, you know, you know that there's a reason for it, but don't let it worry you. You know, like I said, focus on the mission at hand, focus on your people. You know, your main job is to make sure that your people walk out the end of the day the same way they walked in, upright on their 2 feet, safe, and to give them as much guidance as you can. Respect is gained over time. It's never instant, so don't think it is, and don't stress yourself out trying to get there. Do it little by little. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a good sergeant or a good lieutenant. So.
Yeah, and I love what Dave and Joe said, but I want to comment on something Eric said. But real quick, remember, guys, remember this one thing. When we talk about rolling up your sleeves and kind of getting dirty with your people, that's to assist, not to do their job for them. So remember, I want people to understand that, because, you know, when I roll up my sleeves, it's because, you know what? I noticed Russ has been running around all day. You know, he's been constantly busy. Hey, Russ, why don't you take a breather? I'll cover this guy's break for you. You know, you've done a lot today. You sure? Yeah, I got you, man. Don't worry about it. You've done a lot today. The last thing you want is when people see you rolling up your sleeves, like, oh, don't worry, Gangi's going to come in and he could do my tour for me. That's not. This is teamwork here. I want to help you do your job, but I don't want to do your job for you, if that makes any sense. There's a balance there. But I want to mention, I did a video on this. Eric S. said something. This is a good thing real quick. So there was a balance. So he says it's interesting experience switching facilities with promotion. The new facility staff may not initially affect your experience, but on a positive note, you don't supervise your former peers. Okay, so guys, just to kind of do this real quick, I worked at five different prisons. It's going to be 5 starting Monday. I worked at every level. I worked with every gender, and now I'm going to be working at a sexual offender unit, a treatment center for sexual offenders. That may be my last stop before I retire. But I'm also part of an employee morale thing for the whole state, which is a great team, and we're going to be responsible for over 6,000 or 7,000 employees. But with that said, going back and forth to the different facilities, it's hard because you got to kind of adapt to this new culture, meet the people, this dynamic. And what Eric says is spot on real quick. When I first entered the supervisory role, so believe it or not, as you move up in supervisory positions, like I've been an admin now I've been in administration now since 2015. So almost 8 years, whatever it is, almost half my career at this point. The hardest role for me was literally crossing into the introductory supervisory role, which was officer to sergeant, because that's the first time I'm supervising my people. Now, that's my perspective. And my biggest concern was, if I did supervise my peers, would I have the pressure of falling back because I wanted to still remain their friends? So it was great for me to go to a new facility because the new people only saw me in that supervisory role, and it helped me to embrace it. So when the people came into the facility later that I may have knew as an officer, they were the ones that had to make the adaptation, or they're the ones that had to adapt, not me, because I've already made myself I made myself adjusted to that role. Now I figure for those that work in a jail, who when they promote in rank, they're going to stay within that same facility. They're going to do a lot of the adapting because, again, you know, they're going to be working with their peers, and it could make it a little bit difficult. But again, what helped me was I was able to establish a supervisory role with a new staff, and then that forced the people coming in who I may have known as officers to make the adjustments now. So that really is a good help to go to another facility and not get caught in the comfortability of staying in the same one. And guys, as I said, going on to my 5th facility now, you know, meeting new people. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do. But having said that, to me, it truly has been very beneficial. Okay. So the next one, we got 2 more left. And I'll go with Joe first, then Russ, because I think Russ went first. I try to do alternate it. And it's ended a long week because we're fucking up our words all day here today. Yeah, because I'm like, what's going on? This is key, and it is a softer skill. And I want to talk about it on multiple levels because when we talk about collaboration, I want you guys to remember something. I would like to always look at the house, no matter what department anytime, my buddy. That was a comment from the person that asked us the question. He said, thank you. I don't want to say his name, so you are truly welcome, sir. Always a pleasure. And I'll tell you who he is when the show's done. You guys are going to know who he is. So real quick, when you enter corrections, you have to remember something. It's hard to see when you're frontline and only focused on your department, but your team is the whole house. It's the whole facility. I mean, that's actually on the micro level. On the macro level, technically, it's the agency. It should be a whole team. But having said that, that's hard for people to buy in. I get it. So just hear me out in the meantime. As a frontline, you may find that as an officer, my team or my surrounding GAs, or my team today may be my area supervisor or my partner. It really, your team could be defined by the people you work next to the most. I get it. But sometimes that's a very limited perspective because as you move up, your team increases because now, especially on the administrative level, my team is every department. When all the department heads come in, that's my team now. So the higher you go, your team increases, because your members increase. And it's funny because you wind up overseeing areas you have no experience in. So having said that, your perspective of a team should always be at the highest level, which should be no matter what level you're at, the house. How do we function as a house? What can we do to help each other and not be so connected to just what can I do to only help my department, or on a smaller scale, what can I do to only help myself? It's going to be something that's going to kill you later on as you decide to move up, and it's not going to be about you anymore. Or it's not going to be just about your department anymore. It's going to be about the house. And then for people that go to higher levels, it's not going to be just about your house anymore. It's going to be about the agency. So again, collaboration's key. But again, you have to actually have a heightened level of your perspective of what defines a true team. And for me, minimal is the team that runs the house. It's everybody who's involved in that house is part of the same team. We cannot be in isolation or work in silos. What's your thoughts, Russ, on collaboration?
I thought Joe was going to go first.
Oh, sorry. So I apologize. You know what? That was so disrespectful. You're right. So what's your thoughts on it, Russ? No, I'm kidding. Hold on. Hey, again, Joe, I'm sorry about that. I forgot who goes first. Thanks, Russ.
I was fixing to take another drink of coffee. I thought I got out easy.
And show that TikTok cup. So what's your thoughts on collaboration? Now, Joe, you moved up rank just like Russ did. And as you move up in rank, your team does increase. Absolutely. Right. But even though I would love to tell people when they're the front line, your team has always been that big. You just don't see it until you move up, unfortunately. But what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on collaboration? How are we the most effective? What really defines a team?
I mean, as you said, as you move up, a sergeant's collaboration is a little smaller than a lieutenant's collaboration. And, when you make it up to the lieutenant level, you start to understand, that your decision not only affects your sergeant and your COs, it also affects other departments. Collaboration with these other departments, because even at the lieutenant level, the whole penitentiary is your team, because, you're the main shift supervisor, especially if it's at night, you're the highest ranking duty, person there. So in order to have a smooth running facility, a well-oiled facility, and a well-understood facility, you have to collaborate with other departments. You have to keep them in the loop, just like, you would hope they keep you in the loop. The more that you communicate with these other departments, and the more that you communicate, everything that you collaborate with these other departments to your staff, gives them a better understanding of the bigger picture, the way the penitentiary runs. So, being the type of leader with collaboration skills with other departments is a must. Good communication, a good clear line of communication is a must. because that, like, what's the old verbiage? There's no I in team. You got to understand the decisions you make not only affect yourself, affect your team, affects, it could affect the whole penitentiary. So, you got to be able to communicate well with them. You got to be able to have a clear understanding of their views, especially when you're dealing with education or medical, because their outlooks on policies are different from custody. So, and you got to have an understanding as to why that is. So, collaboration is definitely a key. The further up you go, the more you're responsible for. Even as a lieutenant, you're basically responsible for that whole penitentiary. You're responsible for everything that happens on that penitentiary, and you're supposed to have knowledge of everything that's supposed to be going on in that penitentiary at any given time. You should know where your people are. You should know what the offenders are doing. You should know why they're doing it at this time and not this time. And that's because you have collaborated with these other departments. The building schedule doesn't always get adhered to because there's hiccups every day that causes either the building schedule to get pushed back and you got to catch it back up, or you actually have some free time and can get some other things taken care of. But you can only do that if you communicate and collaborate with the other departments.
And I like what Harry said. Harry said he's learning how valuable collaboration is in the position I am in now. And I'm sure Joe said it perfectly, but I'm sure Russ will agree. I mean, no one, believe it or not, no one survives in this profession alone. If you don't learn how to collaborate, you'll never survive in this profession at any level. Hey, Russ, you're obviously, this is your area too, man. You could write a whole book on the importance of collaboration.
Well, yeah, it goes back to the other C word that we were talking about. It's just communication. It's just, communication with a particular facet of it that's focused on integrating different parts of the institution together, both vertically and horizontally, because there are all those different departments out there, whether it's medical or education or some other type of programming services or whatnot, and each of those things. And I don't want any of them to be mad at me. Every one of them thinks that they are the number one most important thing that there is going at the institution, because they tend to have a very much more limited view of what happens on a day-to-day basis. We all know that that ultimately we have to keep them safe. We have to provide for security and all of those things before anything else happens. But the way that we can draw those people into our vision and also share what their vision is, so that we can make them see that we really do care about that, is ultimately very important. And I've talked about before. I was one day, and I did this very intentionally because it was presented to me at the moment. I was checking in a piece of evidence, and it was a big, long weapon that I had discovered. And I just happened to show it, to the director of nursing there. And he was like, "Wow, that must be a once in a lifetime weapon." And I said, "No, it's about a once in a week weapon for me." And I realized at that moment that this was a chance to draw him in and to bring him on board and make him feel that he was part of something with regards to, dispensing some of this critical information to some of his people out there that don't necessarily well understand the nature of the facility that they're in.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what collaboration to me really is. It's being able to draw other people in and share your vision with them, and for them to also let you see what their vision is, so that you can help them. Because ultimately, that's what we want to do, is we want to help.
And by the way, Harry, great job. He just got promoted. Let me get you the thing real quick. I want to. And by the way, it was cool. He bought one of my books. I'm curious which book he bought. I think for a position like his, he would enjoy the administration book. He got promoted to just got promoted to branch manager for safety. I oversee the entire state for safety at all facilities. First off,
good job.
Yeah, that's a great job. I mean, that's a lot of liability there. So it takes someone to have a lot of courage to want to step into that position. So that's pretty, that's just awesome. So thank you for taking the time and listen to what we have on the channel and trusting our advice. And he goes, I said, don't forget us little people. He goes, I'll never forget you. And it was cool. He said, I bought your book. The one on your move up through the ranks. Yes. The book that has 159 passages and quotes from hundreds of people in this profession. There's so much value in that book. Tell me what you think after you read it, because that book, I'm telling you, once people have it in their hands, the value that they get. And I also have a newsletter that goes out once a month. That's free. The one coming up will be up in a couple of days. It's about intuition, but you kind of made my day because me and Joe were just talking about it. And I love what Anthony said real quick. I want to touch on this before we go into the last part. Collaboration is important because it does create a shared partnership and a shared vision. I find out that good teams, they work on a trust for each other. They allow conflict because conflict respectfully can develop in truth, but conflict with no trust tends to be personal. And remember, guys, conflict is all about ideas, and you want to discuss ideas. You want to, kind of dig in deep to make sure that we're on the same page. We exhaust all avenues. But conflict is healthy because that's how ideas develop, or that's how we grow as a team. So again, you got the trust, you got the conflict, and then once people are able to feel that their voice is heard through conflict, because it happens. I mean, not everybody's going to agree, but once they feel they have their voices heard, and then we make decisions, they wind up being more committed. So that's the next step. So you have trust, which allows for healthy conflict, which allows for commitment. Right? Because again, I feel that my voice is being heard. You allow us to speak. So when we have an idea committed, and the cool part about that is there's 5 things here. Once the people feel committed, then there's accountability. And accountability goes more towards the person now. So conflict is about ideas. Accountability is more towards the person. And now people want to take accountability. But here's the cool thing. We're also hold each other accountable. And it's healthy. Because the people that are in the best position to help to hold people more accountable are peers. You feel more connected to your peers. For me, when I was working for the floor, don't get me wrong, of course, I want to do what's right for management. But when my peers expected something, I was more motivated because they're my peers. And the last part, so again, you have the trust, which allows for conflict. The conflict, once people speak their mind, it allows for a level of commitment. Once you reach that level of commitment, then you can start holding people accountable because they're committed and they want to do things that are right. So accountability is a good thing because accountability means I care for you. I love you. I want you to do the right thing. And the last part would be results. And I think that comes from Patrick Luciano's book, The Advantage. I always say his last name wrong, but he talks about the 5 levels of teamwork. And it does start with trust and then ends with results. But for me, guys, there has to be a level of care. And I loved what Anthony said when he talked about a shared vision or a shared partnership. To me, that's so true. If you don't shared vision, if you have a team that's not connected because they don't understand how everything fits into the bigger picture, then all you have are just people working as individuals. But if you have someone out there that can set a vision, now vision is really not so much about a destination, it's a direction. I want people to realize that because a lot of people would be like, well, we're never going to reach that. That's not what the vision's there for. The vision is to give you a direction because you're right. We're never going to reach that. But let's just get on that road and keep trying because that's what matters. But if you can get people on the same page, shared vision, shared partnership, you got a team that is healthy. It's a healthy team because the team is, as I said, they communicate, they trust each other. And at the end of the day, if led by a good supervisor, that team will evolve and that team will help the agency. And the good thing about trust, guys, is also when it's trust, growth happens too because people take more risk, as we mentioned before. Now, the last thing I got, Anthony, love you guys. Live is always with the best and most valuable. I love you too, Anthony. By the way, Anthony has a book on the market too. I have it here. I want to get to read it. Anthony Milbourne, I think it's the right person. Psych Warden. It's a good book. I just got to get my glasses on, Anthony, because I'm 45 years old and the writing is a little small, but I'm sure the value behind this book is tremendous. I just got to get a chance to read. There's Anthony right there on the back cover. I'm sure I will get a chance to read it. I'm just in the process.
I think that's gonna apply to your new job a lot, Anthony.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take it with me to work.
Seriously.
Yeah, I'm gonna. You're right. I'm gonna take it with me to work. Again, it's called Psych, Warden. I'm gonna take it with me to work. I'm working on this committee. It's a phenomenal committee, as I mentioned. It's called CMI, CEMI. It's the Committee of Employee Morale and Innovation. I'm the chairperson, and we're trying to do our best to have a thing. It's an initiative called Your Voice Counts, and I've been tied up because I'm also doing a PowerPoint we're going to do a leadership course and stuff like that to really maintain like really good positive momentum. So I've been tied up in that. But you know what? As things start to slow down, which I'm sure it will eventually, I'm going to definitely sit down and read this book. I may take this book with me when I go to the Dominican Republic to go to Nickelodeon Studios. And he said he's 48 years old. I asked his age? Anthony, I asked your age? Or is that just randomly just telling me your age? If I asked your age, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ask your age. I don't know why I did that. Did I ask his age?
I don't know. You were asking a lot of people their ages earlier.
Sorry, Ant. Very random comment there. Making me wonder if I go around asking people's ages. I don't know, but either way, I'm okay. I'm 48. Great. I'm 45. I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry if I asked your age. I didn't mean to do that.
No, I think he just won it out there because you said you were 45 and the print was hard to read.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's on me. All right, good job, man. Yeah, I was wondering how rude am I just to go around asking people's age. Okay.
Hey, we're gonna do a GoFundMe to get you some glasses, man.
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, I do need them. I don't have the flex anymore. So how like as you get older, you lose the what's it called? The lens doesn't flex. It doesn't
focus.
Blur focus. Yeah. All right. So this is the last one. This is actually my favorite, so I saved it to the end. And again, I'll start with who started first last time, guys? It's
Russ's turn now.
Russ's turn. Okay, so creative problem solving and innovation. Go ahead, Russ. I'll let you start off without my bias.
Okay, well, first of all, I wish that we had more creative problem solving and innovation going on in corrections. Unfortunately, things being what they are and corrections, being part of the government, it's a bureaucratic nightmare sometimes. Trying to, actually, innovate and create solutions and trying to, think outside the box and take things in new directions. Sometimes it puts a big target on your back. It gives, people, potential things that they want to use against you because they see you as a threat of some sort. But you know what, on the local level and the things that you can do without necessarily, changing policy or procedure or things like that, you can, really oftentimes really impact a program. That was one of the things that, I always did especially with regards to contraband interdiction and, getting on top of the significant gang problems that we had at one institution that I was with, that really helped kind of, put the whole kibosh on one whole element of a gang I'm not going to mention for obvious reasons. But, I think that if people would just get in there and try things, and be creative and think outside the box and, bounce ideas off of each other at every level, from the bottom up. But those people at the top, they're often stranded in this wilderness of just, slow moving. It's like a sponge instead of a jet fighter, and responding to things takes forever. I had a buddy of mine, Rob Sharkey, really helped get us going on the whole, incident response and alarm response and disturbance control training, the new wave as it happened. And things were just so slow within the department that his whole thing took, 7, 8, 9 years just to roll out and get it all going. And so I think we could be a little bit quicker at doing some of those things. Right now, what we see is of course, all the buzzwords we were doing earlier about reentry and programming and rehabilitation. We're slow coming into it. I don't know if that's good or that's bad. I have kind of a natural aversion toward wanting to go too fast in that. But at the same time, I'm caught up and I'm much more a part of it than I ever conceived that I would be. So anyway, I think that was about all the rambling I can stand for now. We'll let Joe go.
No, that wasn't ramble, man. That was good. That was good stuff there. Uh, hey Joe, what do you got? I mean, to be honest, hey Russ, real quick, that is your area of expertise too. So, I mean, we could do. I mean, we've done shows on this before about creative problem solving and innovation, but the key word here, guys, and is the fact that it is creative problem solving. But I want people to know, and just said it before, it's still structured. I want people to realize I have to emphasize that the creativity still has to have a structure to it, because if it doesn't, you're going to be lost. Okay, so go ahead, Joe. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's still going to be structured, but creative problem solving, creative thinking, and innovation, thinking outside the box, that's a must. I've had some of the best ideas come from new officers, fresh pair of eyes outside looking in. We have this issue going on. What can we do to fix it? And having somebody with 2 months in the system, been on your shift for 3 weeks, give you that aha moment, and you're like, well, shit, why didn't I think of that? Creative thinking and innovation doesn't always have to come from your older hands. It can come from a fresh pair of eyes coming in, seeing a perspective before they, get into a routine of the everyday hustle and bustle of the penitentiary. The ability to be a creative thinker, especially as you move up in ranks, is a must. Innovation, of course, innovation, Texas was always kind of slow with innovation, as far as the tools that we had to use and that we could use. But then again, you're talking about, it was at one point 117 facilities. So innovation for bigger states doesn't always come as quickly as innovation for smaller states, due to budgetary reasons, obviously, but that still doesn't stop you from being a creative thinker and creative problem solver. Being able to think outside the box and use the tools that you already have to make, your facility a better or safer place to be, or to make your shift a little smoother. When you involve other people in that process, man, you just find you have a better group flowing process, a better collaboration of new versus old. And somewhere in the middle, you find a compromise, man. It's just something you have to have. If you stay in that same rut and you don't think outside the box, you're always going to be stuck where you're at, because you never figure a way to, how do you want to say, get over the wall, to see what's on the other side. So, creative thinking is definitely a must for me.
Yeah, and guys, we kind of touched on this before, but when it comes to creative thinking and innovation, you have to realize something. The people on the front line, the officers, the staff, they're solving problems that management don't even know exist. So you have to allow for them to have some freedom and empowerment. I mean, the key is, as I said, is you delegate the authority and let them figure out how it needs to be done. Because in the end, that's where most innovation comes. Innovation does not come top down. It comes bottom up. Because again, they're doing the work every day, so they know exactly what's needed. And, if you micromanage the process, you're not giving your staff a chance to be innovative. But having said that, when you're on the front line and you are doing the job, again, if it's a healthy environment, I'm saying the word, and if you have trolls, you have trolls, but there are risks, and sometimes if you feel something works, make the effort, and again, I said before, so just to keep it on the safe side, it's It's a controlled risk. It's a calculated risk, because you can't have innovation without risk, and creative thinking, even though it's within a structure, creative thinking exists because people try things new, and it's not always based on an emergent situation where it gets discovered. It could be based on the fact that you're doing something routine and it's like, what, there's got to be a better way. Let me try this or let me try that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. In my experience, I have seen innovation come from innovation or creative thinking. If we're going to I think there is a difference, but if we're going to put them together, I've seen innovation or creative thinking arise from definitely emergent situations where you had leaders step up and something novel and they made a decision. It's like, holy shit, we got to repeat that. We got to put that down somewhere. We got that shit was spot on. And again, when I say put something down, it's in pencil. It's always, because things could always change. Or you see it when you get people that get stuck in the routine of something, and because they deal with the routine, they're like, man, maybe I could do something different. Maybe it could do it this way or could do this way. Because sometimes people, in order to avoid complacency in the routine, they look to change it up a bit. Not to break away from what needs to be accomplished, but instead of me walking top tier to bottom tier, I'm going to walk in the middle first. Maybe that's a good route. And I'll go. So again, the routine, if we get lost in the routine, we could become complacent, but there are some people that actually take the time and question the routine a little bit, and not an effort to go against what needs to be done, but an effort. It's like, can we manage to do something a little bit different the next time around? So again, creative thinking. Russ, we did a whole video on this about the what if game, but I do want to remember, when I say structure, what I mean by that is you always have to have an end game in mind. So think with the end in mind and then reverse engineer down. I think that's a book, The Highly Effective People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You can't run in and then you reverse engineer backwards. I do that even with inmate interactions. Unless it's spontaneous, where it's not expected, I know I have to meet with an inmate. I know where that conversation's going, and I'll do whatever I can to keep that conversation where it needs to be. But if there's a moment where the conversation is going to be, I regroup and I game plan. But at the end of the day, never once do I allow that inmate to drive the vehicles. And how do I do that? Is I have an end game, and everywhere I go filters from that end game. And guys, just as a reminder, no matter what it is that you go through, have the choices that you make filter through where you want to be. Trust me, even as an agency, we do that. What is the vision? The vision of an agency is the direction. So whatever choice we make, does it meet where we want to be? And then if you have haters, well, you're never going to get there. I don't care. That's my guiding star. I'm never going to be lost at sea if I know this is where I want to be. And that my choices will reflect that end result, or what I would like to have as an end result. Okay, so let's get our closing thoughts. Joe, anything you'd like to say in closing, my friend?
Absolutely, man. I have enjoyed tonight's discussion.
Good.
It was definitely a good one. My closing thoughts is, no matter what, in the corrections setting, no matter what, you're going to make a mistake, folks. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, learn from it, and drive on. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. The biggest thing is, what do you take away from that mistake you made? What do you do to make it better for yourself later on down the road? For the supervisors, be the type of person that leaves yourself open to compromise. Be that person that leaves yourself open, not only for compromise, but collaboration with other departments within the facility. Because, as you move up in rank, you're going to find out that you need those other departments just as much as they depend on you. So don't be the one to close yourself off to these people. Keep them in the loop. You'll find that the more that you communicate with these departments as to what has to happen and why, you find that they communicate those same things back about their department. And you find later on down the road that compromise comes a lot more quickly and swiftly when a problem arises between departments. So, you know, leave yourself open. Don't close yourself off. You know, you wind up doing yourself and your team more harm than good. You know, as far as, you know, making the mistakes, you know, even for the rookies that are watching this, you know, don't be afraid to pitch an idea. You may have the idea that they've been looking for 10 or 12 years. You know, all it takes is one person, you know, to think outside the box to pitch an idea that can be useful, you know. And like, you know, Anthony said, you know, just understand that it's going to be structured. We have boundaries and parameters that we can work with, you know, with these ideas within the confines of these, you know, the policies and procedures and what we have to work with. But don't be afraid to pitch an idea, and supervisors don't be afraid to be receptive to these ideas. You know, I remember one show that Gangi did. This has probably been, I don't know, 3 years back. We were talking about inmate transports on ambulances, and they were talking about how do you transport an inmate when you don't have a chase vehicle. And you know, I had told them, I said, you know, in Texas, we put the armed officer up front in the ambulance, and we put the unarmed officer in the back of the ambulance when there's not a chase vehicle available. You know, your idea may not work at your facility, but if you pitch that idea out there, it may work in somebody else's facility. Like I said, you may be the answer to somebody else's question. You don't even realize it. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You know, it's a must. Like, communication is key in corrections. You know, what may not work in Texas may work in Tennessee. What doesn't work here may work in, you know, in California or New York, New Jersey, Ohio, wherever. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like I said, you know, you may be the answer to somebody else's solution. You know, supervisors just need to be receptive to that. Don't be closed-minded. You know, having free-flowing information is a good thing. Never shut that valve off.
And that's pretty much a lot of the softer skills we covered today. Good job, Joe. That was a good summary. I was like, you ever pick up, remember at Blockbuster, you pick up the back of a video? Joe just gave us fucking some spot on stuff there. So guys, if you don't have a chance to watch the whole video, you know, last 2 minutes here would definitely I mean, that was a pretty great summary. Thanks, I appreciate that.
You're welcome, buddy.
That was awesome. I appreciate that. What do you got, Russ? How are you going to top that, Russ?
Well, okay. I can try, but here's the thing: is, you know, we come in here and we decide that we're gonna, you know, do this video about soft skills, and, you know, ultimately, it's great to sit here and bounce ideas back and forth, and you know, to spark some thinking in some people and stuff. The thing I really want to say about that, though, is you know, all these ideas I think that we've bounced off and that we talked about and things that we've outlined for people are great, but ultimately it's all about actually developing the skill. You know, no matter what part of the department you're in, whether you're an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, or whatever, now is the time to start building the skills. Get out there and start talking to inmates. Force some conversations on them. Figure out where your skill sets lie and how you can improve all of that communication. You know, when I started in the department, you know, I had never talked to a criminal before in my life. I guarantee it. And the difference between where I was at the beginning of the arc on that first day and where I ended up was two very different places. Get out there also, you know, and talk to medical staff. You know, just because you may not have real reason to ever talk with them much, hit them up and start honing those skills, start bringing them into bear and to practice. And it will make a difference in the way you're able to interact with everybody, whether it's inmates, whether it's brass, whether it's administration. Make those efforts. It's an intentional thing to develop that type of skill set. You're not going to get there just by thinking about it or just by listening to us. There is a practice. There is, there is basically, you have to be able to start getting experience in it. And the only way you get that experience is by going forward and putting yourself out into situations where you may not be necessarily comfortable to start with.
And you guys, to be honest with you guys, the only way you can expand your comfort zone is by expanding your comfort zone. So you have to enter areas of risk, and then that opens up more areas of comfortability. Actually, the newsletter I got coming out is about intuition. And basically, it literally is about trusting your gut. But you have to remember something when it comes to trusting your gut. That really is built from experiences of intentionality where you decided to learn from each experience. One of the things we touched on is, okay, this person has 20 years experience, but did he really learn from the experience? I mean, all because you go through something doesn't mean you learn from it, because you can have someone that has had a few years in and intentionally made the effort to learn through each thing they've gone through. So some guy, well, I have 20 years in. Okay, but, every time you go through something, have you ever really asked yourself questions to help you, evolve in your game? Because I got this guy right now that's been here 3 years, but man, every time he goes through an incident, he plays that what if. He's just constantly, healthy in his head, just trying to see where he could have done things different and better. And then that kind of multiplies the experiences pretty quick, But again, Russ said a key word was intentionality. I think that's also a very important tip for people that are in this profession. Be intentional with your career on everything. Being passive. Don't let this career happen to you. Let it happen for you. And the only way that will happen is if you're intentional. And if I could just close off on some of the softer skills, I know certain people believe that certain words are taboo. And sometimes we're afraid to say those words because we know we're going to have the trolls that are going to take it and define it their own way. So again, Gangi, you told people to take risk in this profession, or Gangi, you're talking about softer skills. Guys, we're giving you the words in context. So yes, these are the words we're saying. I'm not afraid to say them because we're evolving, and I can't expect people to do what needs to be done if I'm sitting here afraid to say certain words because I'm concerned of how people are going to subjectively take it in. So we have these conversations with the context of what these words mean. Not what you may think they mean, but what they actually mean and how we're employing it. That's what matters. When I employ risk, I highlighted the word calculated. When we employed softer skill, we highlighted why those skills can matter, but still balance with the core values. One of the biggest things that my biggest concern is as we move forward in corrections is we still have a fear of certain things that we're afraid to step into because we may still have an alpha mentality. And the problem is that limits our ability to grow and learn because we may be afraid to say softer words because we're more afraid of how people may view us after we say it. We can't be afraid of that anymore. Provide the context, keep it balanced, and then give out the proper education that needs to be done. Don't worry about what people may think about what it is that you're trying to sell. At the end of the day, that's what the context is for, because either way, guys, and this is the last thought I have, is that right now, as corrections goes through these changes, the wrong approach right now is to look for the problem. The right approach is to look for what's working and create momentum, because momentum will solve the problems. And you have to understand where that momentum is going. So if you have a chance, go back into your facility, get an understanding of what the vision is, where the department's trying to head, try to connect to it somehow, and see who's doing it right. And then learn from them. Learn from the people that have moved in the right direction and be a part of where that's going. And I promise you guys, if this is going to be a career for you, if you connect with the right people now, this will wind up being a career of choice where you could choose where you want to be because you know where the department's headed and you won't be lost. And to me, that's what's worked in my favor for over 20 years. So, and again, I was an officer, I was a sergeant, and now I've been in administration for 8 years. So the profession did me well because I was intentional with my efforts. So no regret. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify every time I post a video. Stay safe.